Marcus hadn't slept properly in 3 years, not since the accident that took his wife Sarah and left him alone to raise their daughter Emma. That cold November night started like every other: bath time at 7, bedtime stories at 8, and then the quiet house that always felt too empty. By 11 p.m., he was at the kitchen sink, mechanically washing the dinner dishes Emma had decorated with smiley faces and ketchup, when someone pounded on his front door. The sound shattered the silence. 3 hard, desperate knocks. Marcus froze, soapy plate in hand. Nobody knocked on doors at 11 at night in his neighborhood. Nobody knocked at all anymore. Everyone texted first. His heart hammered as he dried his hands and moved cautiously toward the front door, his mind racing through possibilities. A neighbor with an emergency? Someone with car trouble? Something worse. Through the peephole, he saw her. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, standing on his porch in nothing but jeans and a thin denim jacket despite the freezing temperature. But it was her face that made his breath catch, pure, unfiltered terror. Her eyes were wide, darting frantically from his door to the street behind her, and even through the distorted fisheye lens, he could see her entire body trembling. She knocked again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Please." Her voice came through the door, barely above a whisper but loaded with desperation. "Please, if anyone's there. There's a man following me. He's been chasing me for 6 blocks. Please." Marcus's hand hovered over the deadbolt. Every instinct as a father screamed at him to help, but Emma was asleep upstairs in her room with a butterfly nightlight, completely vulnerable. He was her only parent now. Her only protector. If he opened this door and brought danger into their home, what would happen to her? But that terror in the girl's voice. That wasn't acting. That was real. He looked through the peephole again, and this time he saw it. A black sedan with tinted windows idling at the corner of his street, maybe 50 yards away. No headlights. Just sitting there in the darkness like a predator waiting. Marcus made his choice in a heartbeat. He unlocked the door and pulled it open just wide enough. "Get in. Now." The girl practically fell through the doorway. Marcus caught her arm, steadied her, then immediately shut and locked the door behind her. He engaged the deadbolt, the chain, and the security bar he'd installed after Sarah died. His hands moved on autopilot while his mind raced. "Are you hurt?" he asked, guiding her away from the door toward the living room. She shook her head, but she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Now that she was under the lights, Marcus could see she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 18 at most. Her feet were bleeding through her torn sneakers. Her jeans were dirty and ripped at the knees. Most disturbing of all, there were bruises on her wrists, dark purple rings that looked like restraints. "I'm calling the police," Marcus said, already reaching for his phone. "Yes," she gasped. "Yes, please. Oh God, thank you. Thank you for opening the door." Marcus dialed 911 while moving to the window, carefully pulling back the curtain just an inch. The black sedan was still there, but now he could see someone in the driver's seat. Just sitting. Watching his house. 911, what's your emergency? "There's a young woman in my home who says she's being followed. There's a suspicious vehicle outside my house right now. Black sedan, looks like it's watching us. She appears to have been injured and..." "Address, sir." Marcus rattled off his address, his eyes never leaving that car. The dispatcher's voice became more urgent as she processed what he was saying, asking questions, telling him officers were on the way, instructing him to stay inside and keep the doors locked. "They're coming," Marcus told the girl after he hung up. "You're safe now. What's your name?" "Sophie," she whispered, collapsing onto his couch. "My name is Sophie." Marcus grabbed a blanket from the closet and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was still shivering violently, whether from cold or shock or both, he couldn't tell. He thought about Emma upstairs and made a split-second decision to stay down here, positioning himself between Sophie and the stairs. Just in case. He wanted to trust, but he also needed to protect his daughter. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently, sitting in the chair across from her. Sophie's story came out in fragments, broken by tears and shaking breaths. She'd been walking home from her part-time job at a grocery store 8 months ago when a van pulled up beside her. 2 men grabbed her. She woke up in a basement, locked in a room with 2 other girls. There were more girls in other rooms. She heard their voices through the walls. They were moved around, kept in different houses. Tonight, someone had forgotten to fully lock her door. She'd waited until she heard snoring, then ran. Just ran as fast as she could, not even knowing where she was going. "I knocked on 4 other doors before yours," Sophie said, her voice cracking. Nobody answered. Or maybe they saw me and were scared. I don't blame them. But I saw your light on and I couldn't run anymore. My legs were giving out. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. 4 other houses. 4 other chances for her to be saved. He couldn't imagine what it took for her to keep trying, to keep hoping. You're incredibly brave, he told her. And I'm so sorry this happened to you. Before Sophie could respond, red and blue lights flooded through the windows. Marcus looked out to see 2 police cruisers pulling up fast. The black sedan was gone. Must have taken off the moment the sirens became audible. The next 2 hours were a blur. Police filled his living room, taking Sophie's statement while paramedics check her over. Marcus gave his own statement 3 times to 3 different officers. A detective arrived, then another, then someone from what looked like the FBI. Through it all, Marcus kept checking on Emma, who somehow slept through everything, her small chest rising and falling peacefully under her unicorn comforter. Finally, a veteran officer with grey hair and tired eyes took Marcus aside. You need to understand something, the officer said quietly. That girl you helped tonight? She's one of 17 girls reported missing in this region over the past 2 years. Because of her escape and what she's told us, we know where to look. We are raiding that house right now. You didn't just save her life, sir. You might have saved a dozen others. Marcus watched as they carefully helped Sophie into an ambulance. She looked back at him through the open doors, mouthing 2 words, "Thank you." He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. As the ambulance pulled away and the police finished their work, Marcus finally went upstairs to check on Emma one more time. She was still sleeping, peaceful and safe, completely unaware that her father had just opened their door to a nightmare, and in doing so, had given 17 families hope of seeing their daughters again. 2 weeks passed before Marcus saw Sophie again. 2 weeks of reporters calling his phone, news vans parked outside his house, and neighbors he'd never spoken to suddenly wanting to chat. The raid had been successful. 12 girls recovered that first night, 3 more found in a connected location 2 days later. 2 men arrested, 3 more being hunted. The story dominated every news channel, and somehow Marcus's name had gotten out despite police efforts to protect his privacy. He'd stopped watching the news after the 3rd day. It was too much. All he'd done was open his door. Emma knew something had happened. She'd woken up the morning after to find police tape across their lawn and her father's exhausted face across the breakfast table. He'd told her a simplified version. A girl needed help, Daddy helped her, the police came. Emma, in the beautiful simplicity of being 6 years old, had simply said, "Good job, Daddy," and asked for chocolate chip pancakes. Life was slowly returning to normal when the doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus was helping Emma with a jigsaw puzzle on the living room floor, and his first instinct was to ignore it, probably another reporter. But Emma was already running to the window. "Daddy, it's a fancy car." Marcus stood up, his knees cracking, and looked out. A silver Mercedes sat in his driveway. And standing on his porch, looking healthy and whole in a blue sweater and jeans, was Sophie. Behind her stood a man and woman who could only be her parents, the same dark hair, the same brown eyes. This time, Marcus opened the door without hesitation. "Sophie," he breathed. She smiled, a real smile, nothing like the terrified mask he'd seen 2 weeks ago. "Hi, Marcus. I hope it's okay that we came. We wanted to see you. To thank you properly." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus started, but Sophie's father stepped forward, and Marcus saw tears streaming down the man's face. "Yes, we do," the father said, his voice thick with emotion. "We absolutely do. I'm James Morrison. This is my wife, Linda. And you gave us our daughter back." Linda Morrison was crying too, and suddenly Marcus found himself in the middle of a group hug on his front porch, with 3 people who were strangers but somehow felt like family, all of them crying together. Emma appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with curiosity. "Is that the girl you helped?" she asked. Sophie knelt down to Emma's level. "I am. And your daddy is a hero. Did you know that?" Emma nodded seriously. "He's always been my hero. But I guess he can be yours too." That simple statement broke something open in the Morrison family, and fresh tears flowed. Marcus invited them all inside, made coffee, and let Emma show Sophie her puzzle. For an hour, they sat in his living room and talked, really talked. Sophie told them about her recovery, the therapy she'd started, how hard it was but how grateful she felt to be home. Linda held her daughter's hand the entire time, as if afraid to let go. Then James Morrison pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. His hand shook as he held it out to Marcus. "This is from all the families," James said quietly. "All 17 families whose daughters came home because of what you did." Marcus took the envelope, confused. Inside was a check. He looked at the number and his vision blurred. $50,000. "I can't accept this," Marcus said immediately, trying to hand it back. "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have." "No," James interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp. "No, Marcus. Anyone wouldn't have. And I can prove it." James stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow with pain. "I'm a detective. 23 years on the force. When we got the tip that Sophie might be in this area, I came here that night, the same night she escaped. I was canvassing the neighborhood, knocking on doors, showing her picture, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I knocked on 40 doors that night, Marcus. 40 houses on 6 different streets. Do you know how many people answered? 17. Do you know how many invited me in to talk properly, to really look at my daughter's picture, to take down my number in case they saw something? 5. 5 people out of 40 homes." James turned back to face Marcus, and the anguish in his eyes was devastating. "And do you know what the worst part is? Sophie told us she knocked on 5 doors before yours. 5 houses where people either didn't answer or looked through their peepholes and turned away. She was barefoot, bleeding, clearly in distress, and they chose not to get involved. They chose safety over compassion." Linda Morrison spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "You were the 40th door, Marcus. In a very literal sense, you were our last hope that night. If you hadn't opened your door, if you'd chosen fear like the others, Sophie would have had nowhere left to run. That car would have found her." Marcus sat down heavily, the check still in his hands. He thought about that moment, his hand on the deadbolt, Emma asleep upstairs, the choice between protecting what was his and protecting a stranger. How close he'd come to not opening that door. "The raid saved 16 other girls from our nightmare," James continued. 16 other fathers who got to hug their daughters again. 16 other mothers who stopped crying themselves to sleep. This money, it comes from all of us. Every family contributed what they could. Some gave $1,000, some gave $500. One family could only manage $50, but they gave it because they wanted you to know what you did mattered. It's for Emma's college fund," Linda added. "Because a man who teaches his daughter that helping strangers is worth the risk, that man is raising someone special. And we want to invest in that future." Sophie came over and knelt beside Marcus's chair. She was crying again, but smiling too. "You gave me my life back. You gave me my future. Please let us give something to Emma's future. Please let this mean something." Marcus looked at his daughter, who was watching the adults with solemn eyes. He thought about Sarah, about how she would have opened that door without hesitation, about how he'd almost let fear win, about how one moment of choosing compassion over caution had created ripples that touched 17 families, changed 17 futures, saved 17 lives. "Thank you," he finally whispered. "Emma and I, we are honored." James pulled Marcus into another hug, and this time Marcus felt it, the weight of what he'd done, the magnitude of that single choice. Not just for Sophie, but for all of them. For every girl who came home. For every parent who got to be whole again. That night, after the Morrisons left and Emma was asleep, Marcus sat on his couch and thought about doors, how we spend our lives choosing which ones to open and which ones to keep closed. How we build walls to protect ourselves and forget that sometimes, the most important thing we can do is tear those walls down for someone who needs refuge. He thought about those 4 other houses that didn't answer Sophie's knock. He didn't judge them, he'd almost been the 5th. Fear is human. Self-preservation is natural. But so is compassion. So is courage. Marcus walked upstairs and looked in on Emma, watching her sleep in the soft glow of her butterfly nightlight. Tomorrow, he'd tell her about the gift, about college, about how one night of bravery had changed everything. He'd teach her that being afraid is okay, but letting fear make you turn away from someone in need, that's where we lose our humanity. He'd teach her that sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do is simply open the door. Because you never know who you're protecting until you let them in.